Welcome, everyone, to Rupp Fallsgraff's Empire State Entrepreneurs and New York Business Law podcast, a really fun and informative forum for us to showcase our clients, strategic partners, and community leaders to talk about relevant issues for entrepreneurs and business owners throughout New York. My name is David Fallsgraff. I'm blessed to be the managing partner at Rupp Fallsgraff, a full-service law firm headquartered right here in Buffalo, New York, with offices in Rochester and Albany and New York City as well. And as always, I want to take just a quick minute to thank our good friends at Incept, Mike and Eric, for hosting us in this super cool podcast studio. My firm continues to use Incept for a number of marketing projects, and they're doing just a terrific job for us. Now today, most importantly, I'm really excited to welcome a good friend and inspiring guest, Nagendra Raina, the president of Buffalo Games, a Buffalo-based company that manufactures jigsaw puzzles and a ton of other board games and toys, and a company that's really experienced some rapid growth in recent years, becoming literally one of the world's largest puzzle makers. So, Nagendra, it's a real pleasure to have you here today.
It's a joy to be here, David. Thank you for having me on this podcast.
No problem. I want to talk a lot about Buffalo Games, but before getting to that point, you really have a sort of a unique story to tell. I know you grew up in, I believe, New Delhi, India, and I'm curious how your journey has led you to Buffalo, New York, to be in a position to run this great company that we know now as Buffalo Games. How did that journey start and sort of evolve over time?
Sure, of course. So my life is largely a tale of two countries, nearly evenly split. The first 23 years of my life, where I was born and raised, was New Delhi in India, hailing from a very middle-class background, limited resources. Both my parents were educators, closely knit family. And the focus growing up was on two things. It was food and education. Nothing else really mattered. Parents really worked hard to sustain those two elements of life. And frankly, life was very simple. You know, we were contented as a family unit. And my dad was an amazing role model for me. You know, he was my superhero, a very charming and intelligent person, full of life, humor, smarts, energy. And unfortunately, you know, we lost him suddenly. He had an unexpected cardiac event when I was 14 years old. And at that time, my brother, my only sibling, was completing his master's in New York. So all of a sudden, the family baton sort of, you know, was, at least figuratively speaking, was passed over to me. And, you know, taking care of mom's emotional needs was my calling. And I sort of had to grow up instantly, you know, went from being a boy to being a man. And I remember that day and month vividly, and always think of that as an event that was to frame who I am today, you know, build a lot of resilience, a lot of courage during that stressful, you know, period for my family. Moving on to the professional side, you know, I was always astute, I suppose, in math and science and numbers. And I went on to completing an engineering degree in computer science. In the year 2000, I graduated from college, and coding or programming is what was expected from you after a computer science degree. And so my first job was a Java and a C++ programmer. And to be candid, I was miserable. I was absolutely miserable.
That was still in India.
That was still in India. It was still in New Delhi, yeah. And I remember I would rather be anywhere else and do anything else but to be on that side of the computer writing code. I was blessed, though, that in that role, I had a few opportunities to work with my sales staff and directly engage with my customers, and enjoyed that part of my job. So at the age of 21 and maybe not even 6 months into my first job, you know, I told myself, why not take a chance at setting up your own firm, your own enterprise and business, and have someone else sort of, code for you. So that's where my entrepreneurial journey sort of began. And frankly, I was lucky to be in the right place at the right time. There was a dot-com bust here, in the States, and many projects were being offloaded, overseas. So my team grew from a single employee, that's myself, to 185 plus in 18 months. And I was able to have a giant win in the form of, the sale of my business. So here I was, around 23 years of age, and with what I thought at that time was a boatload of money to sustain my life. Thankfully, common sense prevailed, and my mother nudged me at that time to get geographically closer to my only sibling, my brother, who then and still does live in Toronto. He is 14 years older to me, and we never really grew up in the same ages and stages of life. Well, I did like her idea, except I didn't want to be in Canada. So that's how I began my search of the nearest university to Toronto, and that search really brought me to the University at Buffalo. Obviously, not a very strategic way to think about life or to pick a university, but that's my story, and it's worked just fine for me. After my MBA at UB, I had a fantastic 10-year run at Fisher Price across multiple roles, product development, marketing, finance, strategy, gathered a ton of tools and life skills that paved my way for life in America. And post that, and since 2013, so a little over 10 years now, 11 years, I've been leading Buffalo Games, which is the fastest growing toy company and now a top 20 toy business in North America. A national brand with 300 employees, with domestic offices in Buffalo, in Massachusetts, in New Jersey, and internationally, in Ningbo and Shanghai in China. And then on the personal side, I've been married to my wife Susan, who's born and raised in Buffalo. We've been married since 2009, and together we have two boys, 9 and 7, and a daughter who's turning 5. So life is busy, but it's fun.
Tell me, having grown up in India, in New Delhi, and you knew a little bit about North America from your brother, I assume, him having been in Toronto for a bit. But can you recall sort of initial impressions when you got to Buffalo and matriculated at the University of Buffalo? I'm sure there was some excitement, but also some stress and anxiety. But looking back, do you remember what your initial impressions were?
Yeah, I candidly and vividly remember my first night in America, and it was eerily quiet. To be honest with you, silence was deafening. Having come from a crazy city, New Delhi, with the amount of traffic that we have all day long. I was nearly sleepless the first night. I remember this was my uncle's house in New Jersey, and just how quiet it was. That's what strikes me first and foremost. But look, my impressions of America while I was in India were that this is the land of the brave, the land of opportunity, and it's played out for me that way as well.
Did your initial days while you were a student, getting was it your MBA at UB?
Correct.
You enjoyed your time in Buffalo and figured it might be a good place for you to lay roots?
Loved it. I always tell my friends and family, wherever they are in the world, that Buffalo is it's not really a talked about city on an international or global basis, but it has all that I need, frankly. It's a fun city to be in, great people, great culture, great food, and I thoroughly enjoy it.
There's a lot of stories that I like, and I'm sure our listeners would benefit from hearing about you. And the success you've had at Buffalo Games, but one I really enjoy when you tell is sort of how the opportunity developed at Buffalo Games. I know you were happy, you said, working as an marketing exec at Fisher-Price, a great local company, obviously. But what was it that had you or Susan in particular thinking that there might be other roles or opportunities for you where you could really, begin to become an entrepreneur or excel in ways that you hadn't yet at Fisher-Price?
Yeah, so look, Fisher-Price laid the foundational stone for me for a career in the U.S. At that point, though, of life, I was traveling quite a bit. I had a global role. I was in Brazil. I was in parts of Asia. I was on the road maybe 2 to 3 weeks in a month. And during that time, my wife needed me as well, and I started to think about, wasn't actively pursuing, but started to sort of think about other opportunities. And I met Paul and Eden Dedrick, who had founded Buffalo Games in 1986. They're natives of East Aurora. And, the business never, ever lost money in their leadership. So foundationally, a strong start. It was somewhat of a lifestyle, business for them. And in my first few meetings with them, it was clear to me that the company had potential for significant growth and ramp up, but a new vision was required to do so and embark on that journey. And obviously, I had entrepreneurial success in the past, and I thought this was just the right fit for me.
The initial role, if I'm remembering correctly, may have been different. And Susan had thought, hey, look, well, why don't we just throw in Nagendra's resume and we'll see what happens. And it was for a role that maybe wasn't a perfect fit. But as you got into the interviewing process, I remember Paul and Eden being like, "Oh my God, we got an opportunity to work with someone pretty special here." But is my recollection sort of correct about what the initial role was compared to what it ultimately became?
Good memory here, Dave. So the initial role was the lead for finance, and when I first interviewed for the role, it was clear to me that while there was obviously I thought again the company had growth prospects, but that role in itself was not something that would have filled my potential or my hunger. And then quickly, actually really, really quickly, the conversation started more going down the vein of, well, can I lead the entire business? And so, yeah, that's it's a cool story to tell.
I think for our listeners, it's also an example, and I love the word you used earlier about resiliency and not sort of having one set path that is going to be, your career, that there are, challenges or opportunities that present themselves and you don't know exactly when or where, but sort of that resiliency, that curiosity, that open-mindedness around roles and companies and geography. I mean, in a very brief period of time in your life, you founded a company in India and sold it, moved to the United States, started with an established company, but then took a little bit of a risk to go to Buffalo Games. And so I'm interested in hearing sort of your perspective for other entrepreneurs around the importance of being curious or open-minded or resilient when it comes to potential opportunities in the marketplace.
Yeah, look, the bottom line here is without having resiliency, without having the hunger to learn and be better on a daily basis, it's tough to set up a successful enterprise that's sustainable and profitable in the long haul. And to be honest with you, it's not that I've made perfect choices throughout, not at all. But you live with your choices and you make the best out of it. I do remember my first day at Buffalo Games, for that matter. It was a moment of being, holy moly, what did I do here? It was really clear to me that there is so much to be done, but need an overhaul to make things hum again. And that journey needed a significant team and a team that had a global mindset. Look, we sell into Walmart, we sell into Target and Amazon and major retail chains. We are competing with the best on the planet. So we need to attract talent and energize the team to be the best, that we can be and or could be. So with that team and with our collective hunger, we've hiked mountains and we've climbed fast. We were a $10 million business in 2013, and today we are closing in on about $300 million of top-line revenue.
Incredible.
We were predominantly a puzzle business 10 years ago, the third largest in America. Today, puzzles are only a third of our revenue, and we've significantly expanded into board games, in preschool toys, in arts and crafts, in indoor and outdoor recreational products like cornhole sets and volleyball, dartboards, pool tables. So significant change, not just in volume and top line, but also in the breadth and diversity of our product offerings also.
Talk to me a little bit about technology, and I know you brought sort of a fresh perspective to a very successful business, and I'll never forget the couple of times you've walked me through your facility, how impressed I've been with the speed of not only the production of the product, but also how I remember you telling me that during COVID, puzzles were hot sellers, and you could literally get real-time information from the Targets and from the Walmarts or from Amazons and begin to change. I think the example you used was a Star Wars puzzle, and if more stormtroopers were selling than Darth Vader's. But how did your vision, when you came into this sort of successful, but I'll describe this sort of old school business, and you thought, look, if we could leverage technology or use technology to support this good line of business that we have in puzzles, that maybe we could see some exponential growth. And what was your mindset when you joined? And can you give an example or two of some of the changes that you began to implement and some of the results that you saw?
Absolutely. So look, I came into the category without having any knowledge of it. So the first thing I did was invested heavily in market research and really understanding what are the innate needs of the puzzler, an American puzzler, and how are they different from other markets such as Germany, where puzzles over-index, so to speak. And it was clear to me that us and our competitors weren't doing justice to the needs of the consumer here in the States. And what I mean by that is it's a very assortment-driven business, meaning that when we ship a six-pack, let's say of, you call it a Star Wars puzzle, to Walmart, well, if you've done already completed a puzzle, you're not doing that again. So maintaining that variety on the shelf is incredibly important. And frankly, you really, while we do a lot of research and have a good gut intuition of what the puzzler needs, there are cases where we are wrong. So it was important to us to ship only what sells over the counters to keep that, the wheel moving. And what we did was we doubled down while our competitors were moving their production to China and procuring from the Far East. We doubled down on domestic manufacturing. And to make sure that we were competitive from a cost standpoint, we invested heavily in automation. So the puzzles we make in North America today, they are significantly better quality than the ones that our competitors are sourcing from China, but also our puzzle cost is lower than a puzzle that today we purchase from our Asian factories.
That's interesting. And perhaps results in a competitive advantage, I assume.
It totally is. We are so on top of trends. If there is a license that hits or an image that's trending over Twitter or Instagram, we can be the first to market. And there have been cases, especially in puzzles, where there's something that's taken off, and we are literally the first product in all of hardlines across Walmart and Target. So it gives us the ability to be agile and be nimble.
Tell me, growing a business from 10 million to over 300 million in 10 years is no small feat, and I know it takes a village or it takes a team. And I'm curious, Nagendra, about your experience over the last 10 years in building out your team, and whether it's recruiting in Buffalo or opening up other offices to support the mission of the company. Can you tell our listeners a little bit about your vision when it comes to the importance of team and building out a best-in-class team?
Yeah, so look, I have a beast of a team. It is.
Why does that not surprise me?
It really, Dave, is my pride and joy. Frankly, the reason why we are here and the reason why we outcompete, today and will in the future is that we have the most nimble and the most innovative team in our industry. There is not one single C-suite member of any business that I would trade for mine. And yeah, it's I probably spend about 5 to 10% of my weekly time in in hiring and attracting talent and energizing the current talent that we have. It's probably the most important and the most fulfilling aspect of my role.
I read a neat quote from an article you had done a year or so ago, Nagendra, and the quote was, "My success and the team's success are really synonymous." And so how do you build that mindset or create that sort of team-first mindset, and what impact do you think that has had on your ability to scale this business?
I think it boils down for me to the idea of being fair to employees, being fair to our consumers, being fair to our retailers. And once fairness is in the forefront of decision making, the team really gets jazzed up, about it. I'm also blessed to have, private equity partners, and the private equity model that we have. We're all ship, on the same boat, on the same page all the time. Our financial results drive the compensation structure, the bonus structure, and there is self-alignment just in the way that we are set up.
I'm glad you mentioned private equity, and I know a lot of our listeners, our entrepreneur listeners out there, aspire one day to be able to develop a business that might be worthy of consideration by a private equity firm, whether it's a local one or one that's headquartered elsewhere. But talk to me about Mason Wells, your private equity partner, and some of the the good benefits that can happen when you are able to develop a strong partnership with a private equity firm that has potentially more access to capital to help fuel your growth of your business.
It's a great question, Dave. Quite frankly, there's a lot of negative rhetoric around private equity. But I can tell you that my private equity partners in the form of Mason Wells, they have been phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal partners to work with. And my journey with them began with me interviewing some of the other portfolio company CEOs and building trust around the Mason Wells process. And as much as some of the listeners may have heard some horror stories about private equity starving businesses of investments and so on and so forth, the reality is that as partners, they've been extremely collaborative and made sure that we have continued to invest in the business, not just in manpower, but in terms of automation, marketing investments as needed. And quite frankly, we have a really good cadence, and I think a cadence to numbers is what Mason Wells really brought to us. We have a quarterly, board meeting, which is looking at yourself in the mirror and seeing, what do we need to do to continue to accelerate the growth path that we are on, and the team is fully engaged with our private equity partners, and as are they.
I know you've experienced organic growth, obviously, and but also I understand that you've done some acquisitions, and I'd love your perspective or thought that did the private equity partnership with Mason Wells, maybe prior to Mason Wells, you dreamed about being able to acquire a bolt-on company that would help accelerate growth, but did you find those acquisitions to be easier to pull off with a private equity partner like Mason Wells, as opposed to sort of just doing it the old-fashioned way and the traditional way, or any lessons learned in that sense, Nagendra?
Of course. So a couple of things that come to mind there. First and foremost is the fact that many companies are built around bolt-on acquisitions, and quite frankly, we are not unless there is a important and integral strategic fit to our core business. We wouldn't consider acquisitions purely because our first effort in terms of time and in terms of dollars is around organic growth. But you've rightly pointed out, Dave, over the last couple of years, we've had a couple of acquisitions and we've hit big on them. So we've been really thoughtful about, as a team and as our private equity partners, really thoughtful around, does this make sense? Can we acquire this business and fundamentally change the trajectory that they would have been on otherwise in our absence? And every single one of them has been a home run, for not just for us, but for the companies that we've acquired as well. And where does private equity come into this? The biggest thing would be the access to capital and the ability to raise dollars and really move fast and make deals that make sense for us and close them in a timely fashion.
If you had a crystal ball and you had to look out a few years, maybe 3 to 5 years from now, a two-part question. Curious as to where you see Buffalo Games and its trajectory going in the next 5 years, but equally important to me and probably to our listeners. What about you, and where do you see yourself personally or professionally in 5 years, still at the helm of Buffalo Games, or tackling another opportunity? So company wise and then sort of personally, give us a look into the future, and in a perfect world, where do you see both?
Of course. So look, for me, on the professional side, the long and short term are both aligned, and they're the same. We are in such a fast-paced industry, Dave, that long term really means very little without near-term execution and success.
That's a really good point.
There are CEOs that I've seen that are thinking what happens 15 years down the road, and you can invest a lot of time in that and be caught up in that thought. But the company is, built on near-term success, and you do that continually, and the long term takes care of itself. Look, our goal is to grow high teens, grow fast, grow fairly. Fairly for our retailers, fairly for our consumers, fairly for our employees. And we do that by being the most innovative company in our space and really having a nimble business model, that aids fast, decision-making, focus on action, and focus on results. I can tell you that we are probably the most flat organization that you've come across in terms of how we are set up. Accessibility across the board from top to bottom it's a very, very transparent business, and that's why the employees love being part of that growth journey. On the personal side, kids are growing up fast, and I just want to pause with them and just smell the roses when I can.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Tell me, certainly you've had some incredible success and have made such a incredible impact, not only on your family, but also here in the business community in Western New York and really at a national level too. But I'm sure that success has been tempered at times with challenges or adversity or setbacks. And for the young entrepreneur out there who's trying to build out his business or develop strategic partnerships, any advice, any lessons learned as you look back on your early stages of your career? What could you impart on our listeners as far as what traits, what skills, what attributes, what lessons maybe you've learned over time?
I think if there's something to be learned, something that I've learned is do what you enjoy most. Work is not a place to earn a living. If you think of work as a place where you have the most fun, life gets rewarding quickly. The other thing I'll give is to be practical and pragmatic in the short run. Of course, you have to pay your bills, but yet, success and monetary gains are generated over time. So one needs to be, patient and resilient. Especially today, with tech, you hear a lot more of the overnight, billion-dollar stories. And it very well might be yours. And I'm talking directly to the budding entrepreneurs that might be listening to this podcast. But yet, most successful entrepreneurs build their businesses over time. So being patient is, a key virtue. So that would be my advice to some of the listeners out there. Some of the hardest lessons, one thing that comes to mind is that you can maybe solve a process problem with the right people, but you can nearly never solve a people problem with a process, or at least that's been my learning. So hire the best, attract the best, and the best shall happen. I guess the lesson is without the right intellect, I believe one isn't right sizing to the truest potential of the business or to the idea. So as I always say, hire the best, support them with resources, nurture your talent, be patient, and, results will surely follow. As CEOs, as senior managers, our number one job, I think, Dave, is to construct a robust team that really rallies behind the company's vision, is passionate about it, and is unwilling to disappoint you. I think that hunger and the ability to have a high personal standard is important as well.
That's really, really helpful, I think, for our aspiring entrepreneurs and even some of our more seasoned CEO listeners. Before I let you go, and I know you're busy, so I want to respect your time, but I know you have profound love for Susan and your kids, and have a neat story to tell that I think deserves to be told on grander scales than just this podcast. But anything about you, Nagendra, that may be an unknown fact or a hobby? Do you do the puzzles that you help manufacture? Tell us something that maybe none of us would know from reading about you or from listening to this podcast.
I knew you would ask. So I love to strength train. That's really my hobby, and that's in any time that I get, I love to run, I love to hike, I love to hit the gym. In terms of unknown fact, somewhat embarrassed to admit this, but while I am the CEO of the largest puzzle maker in North America, and many of my friends jokingly call me the Puzzle King, the fact is that I have never, ever singularly put a puzzle together. It's just not what I do. I love puzzlers. I think it's an amazing activity, but I suck at it. In fact, I get agitated when I see 1,000 pieces on a desk. So that's my unknown fact.
That's perfect. Well, to the Puzzle King, to my good friend Nagendra, Raina, I really, really appreciate you coming on this podcast today, and I look forward to spending much more time with you in the future. So thanks again.
Thanks, Dave. It was a joy to be here.
All right, it's a wrap. That was awesome.
Cool.
That was a great way to end it.
Cool.